So when you look at John 13, and Yeshua is washing the disciples' feet, if you first look at verse 8, Peter questions Yeshua, why are you washing my feet? And Yeshua says, if I wash thee not, thou hast no part with me. Okay? And then when you go further into the chapter, and it says from verse 13, you call me Master and Lord, and you say, well, for so I am. If I then, your Lord and Master, have washed your feet, you also ought to wash one another's feet. For I have given you an example that you should do as I have done to you. Okay, now I'm also going to quickly fly down to verse 20. Verily, verily, I say unto you, he that receiveth whomsoever I send receiveth me, and he that receiveth me receiveth him that sent me. Okay, so what is Yeshua talking about here? What does the washing of feet symbolize? What does it represent? It represents the royal law. Loving your neighbor as yourself. Yeshua elevated 2 commandments, to love God and to love your neighbor. Now, loving God is Deuteronomy 6, verses 1 to 5, and it means to keep the commandments. Loving your neighbor as yourself is Leviticus 19, verses 15 through to 18. It means to teach other people to keep the commandments. That is what loving God and loving your neighbor is. And Yeshua has given us an example here. And first of all, he says, if I don't wash your feet, if I don't correct your sins, if I don't correct you and put you on the right path, then you have no part with me. Okay, so even that tells you that keeping the commandments, Yeshua cleansing us of our sin and showing us how to keep the commandments, that is what gives us a part with him and the Father. Okay, but then he says, what I've done unto you, you must do unto others. I've given you an example that you have to now keep. Okay, and then he says that he that receiveth whomsoever I send receiveth me, and he that receiveth me receiveth him that sent me. Okay, so this is telling you that when Yeshua sends you as a disciple, you are received of the Father. So if you don't do the work of a disciple, which is going out and preaching the gospel, the true gospel, not this apostate Christian fake gospel, preaching the true gospel, Acts 3, the refreshing of the covenant, Hosea 6:6, he prefers mercy and not sacrifice, the knowledge of God more than burnt offerings. This is the true gospel, not just believe in Jesus. That's a fake gospel. That's a wicked gospel. Okay, when you preach the true gospel, after you've been sent by Yeshua, he tells us in Mark 13, go and watch, become watchmen. If you do that, you will be received of the Father. If you don't do that, you won't be received of the Father. You'll be a wicked servant, and you'll be cast out where there is weeping and gnashing of teeth. Okay, go and read all the parables. It's all about servants. It's all about servants who either do what their master tells them to do, or they don't do what their master tells them to do. Or they've got wicked hearts in doing what their master tells them to do, and their master sees straight through it. Yeshua is the master, we are the servants. You're either a good servant, or you're an evil servant. Okay? Now, I spoke about this in the video I did yesterday, but like I said in the video yesterday, I'm going to be talking about this a lot because it's so important, okay? Romans 10. Paul is asking the question, how are people going to hear the gospel in the last generation? And he says, how then shall they call on him whom they have not believed? How shall they believe in him of whom they have not heard? And how shall they hear without a preacher? And how shall they preach except they be sent? Okay, Yeshua just told us in John 13 that he will send disciples. He's going to send them, and he's told them what to do, to wash people's feet, which means to rebuke sin, to fulfill the royal law. Then he quotes Isaiah 52 in Romans 10. How shall they preach except they be sent? As it is written, how beautiful are the feet of them that preach the gospel of peace and bring glad tidings of good things. Okay, so when you go to Isaiah 52, okay, when you look at the context from verse 1 up to verse 7, It is God, basically, it's God gathering together his elect. He's waking up his elect, okay? Just like Paul talks about in Romans 11, where Israel were blind in part until the fullness of the Gentiles comes in, which basically means that there was a curse put over Israel when they got kicked out of the land in 2 Kings 17 because of idolatry. There was a curse put over them for 390 years. They were to be scattered into the Gentiles, and they weren't allowed to be in their inheritance. Okay, now after that 390 years, they were allowed to return. But because they didn't return, there's a clause in the law in Leviticus 26 that says, if you don't receive chastisement and correction from my original punishment, then I increase it 7 times. So that 390-year curse became a 2,730-year curse. And it went all the way from 722 BC to 2008. Okay, now, in 2008, that is when the call to watch began. It is also when the church became just full-blown apostate. Okay, it's when the fullness of the Gentiles came in, and it's when suddenly his people started springing up like the grass and surnaming themselves Israel. And God started calling people to watch. This is why the Torah movement exploded. Every single person who is in the Torah movement has been called to watch. Okay? But 99% of them are going to go into Great Tribulation. Because 99% of them aren't doing what God has actually asked them to do. Instead, they're feeding their own bellies and fulfilling the last half of Isaiah 56 and all of Ezekiel 34. They've become evil, unprofitable shepherds who don't feed the flock. In fact, they kill them that are fed who are trying to feed the flock. Okay? Now, in Isaiah 52, it's talking about how God is going to wake up his elect in the last generation. Okay? It says that in verse 4, you've sold yourselves for naught, but you'll be redeemed without money. Awake, awake, put on thy strength, O Zion. Put on thy beautiful garments, O Jerusalem, the holy city. It's talking about put on the 10 commandments. They're the beautiful garments. They're the robes of righteousness. He says that my people shall know my name, therefore they shall know in that day, which is the great and terrible day of the Lord, that I am he that doth speak. Behold, it is I. But before he does that, before the great and terrible day of the Lord comes, he raises up watchmen to go and warn the people to try and save them out of the destruction that is coming. Verse 7, how beautiful upon the mountains of feet, I've said it again, how beautiful upon the mountains are the feet of him that bringeth good tidings, that publisheth peace, that bringeth good tidings of good, that publisheth salvation, that saith unto Zion, thy God reigneth. Thy watchmen shall lift up the voice, with the voice together shall they sing, for they shall see eye to eye when the Lord shall bring again Zion. Okay, so before the great and terrible day of the Lord comes, God is going to raise up these watchmen who are going to be preaching good tidings that publish peace and bringeth good tidings of good. Now, when you look in the Strongs, good tidings of good means properly to be fresh. So these watchmen are going to be raised up before the great and terrible day of the Lord, and they are going to be preaching the refreshing of the covenant, which is exactly what me and my brothers and sisters are doing. You will never ever have a pastor tell you what I've just told you. Okay? So, if you want to learn more, I will teach you everything I know. Just ask. Reach out and ask. I'll sit on the phone with you for hours. So will my brothers. So will my sisters. We'll teach you everything that we know. We are praying continuously. Sorry, I got a really runny nose. We are praying continuously that the Lord would send forth his harvest workers. Now, if you listen to this video and you are pricked in the heart, that is his conviction. Now, you can either embrace it and actually come and help us and serve God how he was supposed to be served, or you can turn from it and you'll go into great tribulation. So the choice is yours.